Hello everyone and welcome to the Nürburgring. The sunshine is here and we're absolutely thrilled. It's the 8th race weekend of the DTM season 2018 and this is such an amazing racetrack. We already had a fantastic race yesterday, so let's see what today brings. And with me is Philipp Eng. Philipp, yesterday you were a bit unlucky in the race. Today you almost had secured pole position, but then unfortunately the qualifying was a tad bit too long, but now it's P3. So are you gonna ace this race? Do you have a really good strategy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, unfortunately, as you say, both qualifying sessions were a bit too long. I was also leading after set 1 yesterday, but it's over when it's over, so no complaints. I also take third place starting position, which is good. I think we have a good race car and I'm cautiously optimistic for the race.
All right, well, go get him, Tiger. Thank you very much, Peng. And now, let's have a look at one particular BMW that was on a very interesting path. Here's a commentator.
Oh yes, very much so. As we zoom out of the Philipp Eng car in the sight of the Nürburgring Castle here, this particular BMW, driven by one Mr. Martin Tomczyk on the Nordschleife. Really something that many DTM fans have dreamed of for a long while, to see a DTM car back on the Nordschleife, and Martin Tomczyk then at the wheel of this, former DTM champion of course, and Martin Tomczyk certainly knows how to drive, and wow, what we would have given to be a passenger in this particular car going around the Nordschleife and doing some celebratory donuts as well. It's fantastic to see Timo Glock's car on that phenomenal circuit, the Nordschleife. So really, really good to see, and big thanks to BMW and Martin Tomczyk for putting that car out there. So the grid is a packed place, as you can see, ahead of the start of race 2. This is Jamie Green, then his qualifying time, a 1:22.711. It's P15 start for Jamie Green in the Hoffman Group Audi, the all-orange colours of Jamie Green, then with a lowly grid position relative to what he would have liked, I'm sure, as Mr. Gerhard Berger there, ahead of the DTM with Mr. Jean Todt down there on the grid ahead of the start of this race. Daniel Juncker-Deyer, he is going from P14 on the grid, that 1:22.624. Means P14 for Daniel Juncker-Deyer in the number 23 car, of course a DTM race winner this season. And Augusto Farfus then, it's a P13 start for Augusto Farfus. So, Augusto Farfus, the Brazilian, who's been on the podium this season, but has yet thus far been winless. What can he do? What strategy can they find from P13 on the grid for Augusto Farfus? There is Nico Müller. Nico Müller will be going from P12 on the grid, a 1:22.568 from Nico Müller. Let's go back down onto the tarmac right now, as Verena has a very special guest with her.
So now I'm here with Jean Todt, the president of the FIA. It's a great honor to have you here at the Nürburgring. And of course, now I want to hear from you. What do you think? The sun is shining. We've got full house here. What do you think of the atmosphere and in general DTM and the direction it's going?
I mean, very happy to be here, to see so much enthusiasm for the championship. And of course, I came here to see the DTM race and the Formula 3 race, which is a FIA championship. And I mean, talking about DTM, I'm very impressed about the job which has been done by Gerhard, and to see 18 cars in 8/10 of a second. So I'm very much excited to see how the race will go along.
And we're very excited to have you here, so do enjoy the race. Thank you very much, Jean Todt, and back to you.
Thanks very much. Great to have Jean Todt here, and Gerhard Berger, there they are down there on the grid, the head of the start of this race. And there is Marco Wittmann then, Marco Wittmann going from P9 on the grid. So the BMW two-time DTM champion driver, Marco Wittmann then, as I say, going from P9 on the grid. And Marco Wittmann do from there. Flags flying. It's a gorgeous day here at the Nürburgring. The scene is set for what will be a perfect race 2 from DTM, I am sure. René Rast making his way out of the garages on his way to the track. Let's go back to Verena now.
All right, so finally I found René Rast. It was a bit of a tricky situation, but I found you here chilling a bit in the shadow. Pole position again. Let's see if you can do victory again. That would be lovely to repeat history, obviously, but the most important is you're really picking up the speed now.
Yeah, looks promising. I mean, already last 4 or 5 weekends, it started in Zandvoort with a victory, and since then we have a very good performance, and this weekend it's just the highlight of the season, I would say. 2 pole positions, yesterday the victory. Hopefully another one today. It's going to be tough against BMWs and against the Mercedes. But let's see. You know, the race is long. Anything can happen. So let's see.
But I think it always helps. You're always so chilled. How do you do that?
Just like now. I just try to find a quiet place where nobody can find me and then relax.
I have an idea. Close the doors. We'll leave you to it. So best of luck and back to you.
Yeah, well done, because you did find him. And here comes the starting grid for race number 16 then. René Rast, the man that we've just heard from, goes from pole position. Alongside is Gary Paffett going from P2. Philipp Eng is P3. Timo Glock goes from P4, the all BMW row there. Then we find Lucas Sauer and Pascal Wehrlein, P5 and P6. P7 belongs to Mike Rockenfeller, and Bruno Spangler is alongside him going from P8 on the grid. And then we find the two-time DTM champion Marco Wittmann and Joel Eriksson taking a win at Misano, of course. They go from the 5th row of the grid ahead of Paul di Resta and Nico Müller, P11 and P12. Then it's Augusto Farfus and Daniel Juncadella, P13 and P14. Before we see Jamie Green and Lloyd Duval, a pair of Audis, on the 8th row of the grid. And then P17 and P18 we find Robin Freins and Eduardo Mortara. So with the lighting gantry there, when those red lights go out, we know we will be away and racing. Bruno Spangler then, he goes from P8 on the grid. And Bruno Spangler, of course, on the podium yesterday, taking that P2. First time he's been on the podium in 2018. Got his mojo back, perhaps, but it was so close in qualifying, just 100ths and tenths between the drivers. Mike Rockenfeller goes from P7, the Audi driver of car number 99, finishing the race yesterday, P6. So what can Rocky do from there? Of course, yesterday celebrated his 150th DTM race. Pascal Wehrlein, former DTM champion, of course. He goes from P6 on the grid. The number 94 car of Pascal Wehrlein finishing in P7 yesterday. He has been on the podium this season, but only once, and it was in the second race at the Lausitzring, where he banked that P3 place. Lucas Sauer in car number 22 goes from P5 on the grid. So the HWA driver who opened his campaign this year with a P2 at Hockenheim and has had a number of podium places, but remains winless so far this season. Could he do it from P5? Well, as we know in DTM, anything is possible. And Timo Glock, with his 1:22.203 time in his BMW M4 DTM, gives him P4 on the grid. So second row start for Timo Glock. And as Verena was saying just a few moments ago when talking to Philipp Eng, this man, he spent so long at the top of the timing chart during that qualifying session that you thought pole position was going to go his way, but regrettably it didn't. It's a P3 start for Philipp Eng, but the top three drivers were all in the 1:22.1s. It was literally 100ths and 1,000ths that split the top three. Gary Paffett goes from P2 on the grid. He, of course, on the podium yesterday, finishing P3, and has retaken the lead in the Drivers' Championship. So Gary Paffett will be hoping for a very good race today to maximise his points haul. And, of course, he will be going for the win. There's no question about that, as will this man. René Rast, who yesterday was very understated in terms of his thoughts and prospects for the weekend, and then delivered it all. And has delivered it once again in the first part of the action today. And that was in the qualifying session where he banked the fastest time. And that, of course, gives him pole position, a 1:22.140, and Gary Paffett was 6/1000 slower. That's how close it is in DTM. But René Rast did it when it mattered and crossed the timing line to deliver the fastest time in qualifying. So what will he be able to do? Well, he's put himself in the best possible position going forward. So all is calm and all is serene ahead of the start of this race. 55 minutes plus one lap with a mandatory pit stop to come as well. So Rast, Paffett, Eng, Glock, Auer, Wehrlein, Rockenfeller, Spangler, Wittmann, Eriksson, di Resta, Müller, Farfus, Juncadella, Green, Duval, Freins and Mortara. That's how they all line up for this 55-minute plus one lap race. And as I mentioned, with that mandatory pit stop in the middle of it, we're set for another cracker, we hope, with race number 2 from DTM to come this weekend from the Nürburgring. would suggest that the weather conditions are almost perfect for racing. We're here in the Eifel region of the Nürburgring, and a guy that's been out there on the track this morning is alongside me now, the BMW junior driver, Ricky Collard. You've been driving the DTM race taxi. Track conditions good?
Track conditions out there today are absolutely, as you said, perfect. It's going to be a good day, and I think a storm's going to break out on the track because we've got quite a mixed grid again today with all three manufacturers taking the front three places.
And that, you know, that is one of the very, very positive things about the DTM as we look at the driver standings now. After the race yesterday, Paul di Resta had a torrid time of it. He and Philippe Eng connected. Paul di Resta ended up out of the points. That means that Gary Paffett, back in that P3 place, he went back to the lead of the Drivers' Championship. So, you know, it's all topsy-turvy, and it remains topsy-turvy as well. The things that are really, really tight about DTM and good about DTM are the fact that, as you say, all three manufacturers represented in the first three places and split by, I mean, I think it was 6 1/1000ths between P1 and P2. I mean, you could not get closer racing, could you?
Absolutely not. I did think that Philip had done enough.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
And then all of a sudden Rast goes and pops one in. I thought, okay, that's it. And then all of a sudden, how the hell Gary managed to get him in the mix as well? That was, it shows how close it is. And I think that's what's so special about this championship and what sets it apart from other championships across the world, just how competitive it really is out there.
The cars, of course, are Mercedes, Audi and BMW, and to have all three manufacturers represented across the top three places is fantastic. And yeah, we're in for a good race. It's 3.629 kilometres, as we've said. The lap record held by René Rast, incidentally, 122.308. Now, of course, that lap record is taken in the race, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. So that's quite interesting to see that 122. Is it 03?
308.
30. So qualifying's only like 0.2 faster. So it'd be interesting to see today in the race if I reckon we could see that record.
It's possible,
broken.
isn't it? Yes,
yeah.
It is possible. And you know, it's not too warm. You know, it's, as you said, you've been out there on the track as Uli Fritz looks on. You know, the track conditions are absolutely perfect. Now, yesterday's race, Philippe Eng was a part of that for all the wrong reasons. Sadly, he got a drive-through penalty for that contact on Paul di Resta that took him out of the race effectively, or took him out of the point scoring opportunity. You know, we can look at the result yesterday, which actually it was Rast, of course, taking the win, and Gary Paffett was taking P3, and Bruno Spangler took P2. The one that's out of the order, if you like, now is Bruno Spangler because he only qualified P8 today. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, you can look at race 1 and think that, well, that gives you a form guide for race 2. Actually, it doesn't, does it?
Absolutely not. Like I was saying, the margins are so close. The guys don't know how to push an extra 100th or 200th set of 200s faster in a lap time. So it is just so bunched up and so close. And, you know, all it takes is just the tiniest little under rotation. We're not even talking a lock-up, just an under rotation of the tyre, just to push them a couple of centimetres off the apex, and bang, there's your 200. So it is amazing how close it is. And we've got obviously 3 different manufacturers of cars, but 3 different driving styles as well.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays into turn 1, because we've got Philippe Eng, who's coming from P3, who sort of hasn't really got anything to lose. He's a rookie in this championship. And then we've got René Rast, who's clawing his way back into the fight. Whether or not he can get at there by Hockenheim, it'll be a different story. But Gary's sort of the one that maybe might be breaking a little bit early and being a bit more conservative on the inside compared to the other 2.
I think I would agree with that.
That'll be coming up from behind. And then you've got to remember as well, Timo Glock's just in P4, who'll be behind him. And
he's a racer, isn't he?
And they're best mates, I heard, as well. So.
The thing is, do you think that, and you come from the BMW stable, with the 2 rookies for BMW this year, Joel Eriksson and Philippe Eng, both extremely talented drivers from very, very different backgrounds, it has to be said, in terms of how they've reached their DTM career. Do you think that's put a bit of additional pressure on Philippe now to take his first race win, that Joel has done it in Misano?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I think every time you put a crash helmet on, and what I think is amazing is we look at how tight the grid is.
Yeah.
Every single person on there has the ability to win. Every single person could be on the podium there. So, you know, I think as long as you're inside, I think Philip will think, okay, as long as we're inside the top 3 here, you know, I've got a stab at a win. And be interesting to see how they play the tyre game, because obviously Mercedes and Paffett was dropping quite
And we have to make mention of the fact that Gary was quite vocal in after race conversations yesterday, because of course the ITR and Hankook have brought in a rule from this race going forward with regards to minimum tyre pressures, which I think from the gist of it, Gary feels that Mercedes had perhaps been penalised a little bit, and this is all to do with the minimum pressure that you run, because of course the tyre pressures increase as you race. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. So that's why we see on the outlaps the guys viciously warming the tyres, warming the brakes, and by getting heat into the brakes as well, when they then sit on the grid, that heat soak effectively goes into the carcass of the tyre, and that's the best way to warm it. So that's why we can see them lap a lot quicker on the initial. But then when they come out of the pits, they're a little bit sort of skatey and slidey on the cold surface. Yes,
because of course those tyre warmers have been banned in the DTM. So when they come in for their mandatory pit stop and put a new set of tyres on, those tyres are cold, and it takes about a lap and a half to get some temperature, real temperature, into those tyres. Driver standings, it's close, tight at the top between Gary Paffett and Paul di Resta. Eduardo Mortara is P3. René Rast clawed himself up to P4. He's 2 points from P5 into P4 now. He vaulted, so you know he has got and he will sense that he's got perhaps an opportunity to get on terms, whether, as you say, whether he can do that or not by the time we get to Hockenheim. But we've still got a lot of racing to come, Ricky. We're off to the Red Bull Ring after here, and then of course it is that season finale in Hockenheim to come. So there's another 4 races plus this one, and of course another 4 sets of qualifyings as well as we go into the manufacturers' garages. And we can see the tension beginning to build across those garages then, ahead of the start of this second race here at the Nürburgring for this weekend. René Rast then, you can see in the number 33 car, did it all perfectly yesterday, and put the car and himself on the top step of the podium, taking a P1. That followed his P3, of course, in the second race at Misano. So they rev their engines as they head into their grid boxes now. You have to be millimetrically perfect into the grid box ahead of the start of the race. There are sensors all over the grid boxes, so race control know exactly where they are, and to make sure the car is correctly positioned. You can be penalised if you're too far forward or indeed too far back. So Robin Freins and Edo Mortara, the last cars to go into their grid boxes. We await the green flag from the marshal at the rear. There it is. The lighting gantry will light up with 5 red lights, and when the 5 red lights go out, we will be away and racing. The second race here at the Nürburgring for DTM 2018. We are standing by. We have 4 red lights, 5 red lights now. Let's go racing. Gary Paffett, René Rast. René Rast immediately tries to dive to the inside to prevent Gary Paffett with that inside line, but look at Timo Glock trying to get alongside, and Lucas Auer with a real blistering start down the outside could find himself in P2. What a brilliant start from Lucas Auer. So Gary Paffett then losing out to Lucas Auer, and also going to lose out potentially here to Timo Glock. These two, of course, had such a brilliant battle in the opening race weekend at Hockenheim, and they're side by side once again with the rest of the cars behind. But Lucas Auer just flew off the start, Ricky Collard, and Timo Glock is not yielding at all. Timo Glock on the inside, the yellow and the blue cars. Glock and Paffett side by side, BMW versus Mercedes. Paffett goes wide, he's going to lose out potentially to Mike Rockefeller, but just manages to close the door. Whilst, of course, all this is going on, René Rast is escaping up the road. What an opening few turns, Ricky Collard, let me breathe.
That was absolutely exceptional. But you can just see the rivalry that these two have got, and it is great. It gives us such great entertainment. As what he was adjusting, that was his brake bias, yeah. So he's just moving it slightly towards the front. Some drivers, they move it towards the rear a little bit on the first couple of laps because they're quite susceptible to locking them. But yeah, there was no locking there. That was good, hard racing, and I don't think Gary's going to forget that as he now starts to reel him back in as they come down the start-finish line. Wow,
let's see. Augusto Farfus, I know, has dropped right back, so we'll try and pick up on what has happened to Augusto Farfus. The DRS now gets enabled. They have 12 laps worth of DRS to be used during the course of the race. Here comes Augusto Farfus. Perhaps he hadn't dropped to the back then. Maybe I was mistaken. It was Jamie Green, perhaps. So Jamie Green, looks like whether there's a problem with the front of the car, that looked really, really low.
Could have been a puncture maybe, because it looked like the front of the front was quite down, yeah.
So it wasn't Augusto Farfus. Apologies to the Brazilian driver. It was actually Jamie Green. And well, whether there was a problem with the car or whether they're just throwing the dice and coming in for a very early mandatory stop, because Jamie Green's on his way out again. Here's René Rast then leading the race from Lucas Auer, then Timo Glock. Gary Paffett relegated to P4. Where is Paul de Resta in the mix here? Running in P7 at the moment. He's got Bruno Spangler ahead of him. He's not going to be an easy guy to get past, that's for sure. So there he is, Paul de Resta, almost sent a picture just as I mentioned his name, and the rest of the cars coming through. Edo Mortara, another one that's making his way up the order. Loic Duval and Daniel Juncadella at the back of the pack. Of course, they will be joined by Jamie Green, who has taken his mandatory pit stop very, very early on. So Timo Glock gets a black and white flag for forcing another car off the track. That, of course, we saw Gary Paffett run off to the grass and kick up a load of dust, and he was really rather pushed into that by Timo Glock. Didn't have the chance really to find his four wheels on the tarmac because Timo didn't really give him enough room, and he has been warned about that. But I like to see that black and white flag as now Timo Glock. So Timo Glock has gone around. No, it's not Timo Glock that's gone around, it's Lucas Auer that's gone around. The two together. So Lucas Auer, then Timo Glock was obviously having a go at Lucas Auer. The two connected, and it was Lucas Auer that goes around. Bernd Schneider looks on and shakes his head. To his left was Klaus Ludwig. So all of a sudden, without having to try too hard, Paffett's back in the game here, Ricky.
And it's also given René Rast a little bit of breathing space, but now we're seeing Paffett consistently put in purple sectors, and he's also the fastest guy on the track. But here's a replay.
So it was going into turn number one then, so Glock, you could see him run over the curb, couldn't he? And so there was room, you know, the gap was there, to be fair. He came from a long way back. Did Lucas not know he was there? But then, as Glock really attacks that curb, that unsettles the front of the car. He makes contact with Lucas Auer, doesn't he?
That's a massive shame for the pair of them.
Well, it is, because they were both in contention, weren't they?
But the man who wins out of all of that, once again, is the wise old fox. So the ever optimistic, it's Gary Paffett, and he now is up into P2, and there's also de Resta now up to P5.
Well, under investigation, that incident between Timo Glock and Lucas Auer. So Timo Glock we're on board with now, the BMW driver. There's René Rast now, and Gary Paffett is within sight of René Rast, and 7/10 behind him. Gary, of course, will have DRS, and Gary will be reeling in. Oh, and Timo Glock gets a drive-through penalty for causing a collision. I have to say, on this occasion, I'm not surprised by that, Ricky Collard.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a shame. I think the gap was there, but I think just in the final sort of phase, the gap was closing, and I think Timo kind of knew that. But at
that point, presumably, he can't get out of it, can he? He's committed.
That's the problem. You know, once you commit to a move, it's very difficult to back out, and obviously that's a massive shame for him and Lucas as well. But it'd be interesting now. I'm just looking at sort of Paffett's sort of sector times, and he is seriously on a charge, and he's going to be chasing René Rast down. And if he can get in front of René Rast, it'd be interesting, because you're talking about these tyre pressures.
Yes.
If he's running a higher tyre pressure, then that means, okay, he's going to have a bigger advantage at the start. Okay, his tyres won't last as long.
Right.
But we already know how much of a top defender this guy is. And if he can get in front, he's going to have a very wide Mercedes for René to try and get past.
It's all very well. He hasn't got past him yet, but I'll tell you what, he's closer than he has been. It was 7/10, and now it's down to 3/10. So Paffett has got the pace here. So Paffett is lining up the René Rast Audi as they go into turn number one. Then Gary goes to the inside, takes a look, decides against it, comes underneath the René Rast car now. If he can get the momentum, can he get the drive? They go side by side. This is the fight for the lead in this DTM race between René Rast and Gary Paffett. Gary Paffett, the points championship leader, of course. He's running in P2 at the moment, and he's chasing down the Audi of René Rast. So René Rast sticking his elbows out, doing everything he can to put the car exactly where Gary Paffett needs it not to be, to deny any overtake opportunity to the British driver who currently leads the Drivers' Championship. So Paffett is close. Ricky, you'd picked up on the fact that his sector times were really, really quick, and he was reeling in the Audi. But you've got to get past as well, and that isn't necessarily so easy. No,
catching's one thing, overtaking's definitely another, and I think René might be struggling a little bit here. You know, he doesn't look particularly quick. Gary obviously looks exceptionally quick, but if you look in the background, we've got Rocky that's coming up, and behind Rocky there's a whole gaggle of cars of Spengler, de Resta, Wittmann, Eng, and they're all going to be wanting to slice the action. Well,
these two then continuing their cat and mouse fight. You can see the DRS flap on the rear wing open on the Gary Paffett car. Of course, poor René Rast does not have the ability to use DRS. He's not within a second of anyone ahead of him, as Gary Paffett now, again, like Rennie Rast is the fish on the end of the line. He reels him in, reels him in, reels him in. And Gary Paffett then, this time again, chooses not to go for the inside, unlike Timo Glock just a couple of laps ago, which earned him a drive-through penalty. Gary prefers not to go down that route and continues to maintain his position in P2 behind Rennie Rast for the time being. But there you can see Rennie leaves just enough of a gap there, and Gary really closes once again. So there's no question about it, there is a fight on for the lead, and I think I tend to agree with you. Rennie Rast does not look as confident pace-wise in the early stages of this race as perhaps he did at times yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. The aerial shots are great, and they give us such a great insight, and we can see them from them aerial shots that Gary is not missing an apex, and Rennie is obviously trying extremely hard to try and get good exits and get the drive out the corner, so he's not so vulnerable. But here he is, like you said, it's a fish on the end of a reel, and I'm sure that Gary's going to be really close now coming out of the bus stop chicane and then the last corner onto the main straight.
So out of the chicane. And we have seen drivers get to the inside of a car on the exit of the chicane, but you need such good momentum to be able to do that. But now, once again, he is very close. Let's go back with a high shot then so we can see how this Mercedes-Benz reels in the Audi. But again, going into turn number 1, which was one of the favourite places for mounting an overtake move, Gary this time, again, takes a look at the inside, then thinks better of it. And Rennie just puts the car absolutely perfectly where he needs to. What surprises me here is that as these two are fighting, the pace that they're still driving means that Rocky is not able to get into this battle yet. No,
and I think that Paffett will also be aware of that. He doesn't want to attack Rennie too much, that Rennie starts over-defending. But it's interesting, though, the Mercedes looks really good in the infield. And it looks like it has good traction. But I think it's just struggling that last little bit of top end where the Audi looks to be really strong.
So we're on board with Paul di Resta now, who's chasing down Bruno Spangler. Paul di Resta is P5, Bruno Spangler is P4. And looking back at the Marco Wittmann car that is running in P6, and behind that is Philipp Eng, who, in the space of everything that has gone on at the start of this race, we've almost lost sight of the fact that Philipp Eng has dropped back to P7. He really got mugged right at the start of the race, Ricky, didn't he?
That's unlike Philipp as well. Philipp's normally quite a good opening sort of driver, and I think he carries a sort of experience from all the other previous formulas. He's quite sort of sharp on the first sort of lap, so that is quite surprising that he has dropped down. But it's a long race. We've still got 45 minutes left, and like we were doing yesterday, we were just praying for one more lap. So it'll be interesting to see how this race unfolds. So
Mike Rockefeller is now exactly a second behind Gary Paffett. So and Mike makes a big mistake there and loses out to Bruno Spangler and almost loses out to Paul di Resta. Just got that turn 1 wrong, didn't he? Paul di Resta now sensing the opportunity that he can get past the Audi driver, and sure enough dives to the inside, and he follows Bruno Spangler in terms of making up that place. So Mike Rockefeller, from one error, loses out on 2 places, really being punished hard there, as Paul di Resta has gone through as well. And Marco Wittmann, of course, would like to take advantage of that little party that's going on ahead of him as well, and also move up the order. So here we can see from Paul di Resta, that's why I didn't see the lock-up initially.
Yeah, it's obviously just a little snag. It's quite bumpy under braking into there. And like we're saying, you can see how downhill it is in the final phase. It looks like the initial brake was okay, but it was just that last little bit of brake pressure where he held on to it just for a little bit too long with a little bit of steering lock, and unfortunately that's cost him a couple of places.
So Rennie Rast he's opened up the gap, hasn't he, over Gary Paffett fairly significantly now. When they cross the timing line this time, it'll be interesting to see what the gap was. It was 7/10 and what it will be this time. So Mike Rockefeller's got a train of cars behind him, hasn't he? Marco Wittmann and Philipp Eng and Joel Eriksson, as well as Pascal Wehrlein. So on board with Marco Wittmann then, as he's reeling in the Audi of Mike Rockefeller. Is he going to make a move going into turn 1? Mike Rockefeller moves to the middle of the track to defend that inside turn. Marco Wittmann has to therefore go to the outside, but will he get underneath the Audi now if he can carry the speed through? It's the outside line for the next turn, but if he could keep with the momentum, it would give him the inside for the next one, but it's a long way round that turn number 2, and Marco Wittmann prefers to find the inside line where he does go through on Mike Rockefeller. Mike tries to come back now. And, of course, Philipp Eng will try and buy into that as well. So Rocky then obviously not at one with the car at the moment. As he comes back at Marco Wittmann now, this little cut through that links the track, this Grand Prix loop that we're on here And the DTM traditionally uses that 3.629 kilometer layout of this Nürburgring circuit. And, well, as you can see, Marco Wittmann now able to just pull away from Mike Rockenfeller, who's something of a cork in a bottle here, isn't he, really? Because he's got Philipp Eng and Marco Wittmann, first of all, of course, has got past him. And here comes Philipp Eng now with the use of DRS going up towards the chicane. That's always a difficult place, isn't it, to actually make it work. I think if you get the exit exactly right, you can get on the inside of a driver around the Coca-Cola turn, then maybe. But this cork in the bottle effect that I'm talking about, he's got 5 cars lined up behind him, hasn't he? Philipp Eng, Joel Eriksson, Pascal Wehrlein, Augusto Farfus. There's Paul de Resta and Bruno Spangler. And Rocky then, he very, very early on decides to protect that inside line, making Philipp go all the way around the outside, which would give him the inside for the next turn. But Philipp Eng, he stays with it here, and I think this could be done. Job done as he goes past Mike Rockenfeller. So there was Mike desperately trying to protect the inside line, and in so doing, Joel Eriksson nearly having a look as well. By protecting that inside line, his exit wasn't perfect off of turn 1, and that played into the hands of Philipp Eng, didn't it? Absolutely.
He showed good respect there by all the drivers. You know, Philipp tried the outside, and that's a late lunge there by Augusto, but he's making it work just about. Pascal's not going to enjoy that, but he's going to be coming back, that's for sure. Augusto there, that was a brave move. That's not normally somewhere where we see it, but that was a proper touring car move.
Yes,
that was, wasn't it? Elbows out.
He was going for that, and he made it work. Well done, Augusto Farfus. So Augusto Farfus finds himself up to P9 now, having relegated Pascal Wehrlein. Mike Rockenfeller, you can see, is under the cosh now from Joel Eriksson. Joel Eriksson goes through on the approach to the chicane. So in the space of but a couple of laps, look how many places Mike Rockenfeller has lost. I mean, just a few moments ago, we were talking about the fact that he wasn't able to get on terms with the race leaders. Well, now he's dropped a long way back. This was Marco Wittmann fighting with him. And as the car goes wide now, Wittmann spots the opportunity and dives into that gap. You don't need an invitation twice, do you? And this was Philipp Eng then. You can see that Mike Rockenfeller was protecting the inside line, which meant Philipp Eng had got to go all the way around the outside. Now, to be fair to Mike, he left him racing room, didn't he? He didn't squeeze him out onto the grass. And this is Augusto Farfus on him now. There's got to be something up with that Audi. Surely, Ricky, for him to have lost so many places in such a short space of time.
I think it's just really difficult. You're looking at the way that the track layout is. It's quite a flowing track, and once you're sort of, you know, you're playing the guitar and you're out of sync by 1 or 2 beats, it's really difficult to get back in. Right. And I think until he can sort of actually sort of reset and find his legs, you know, I think he will come back through. But be interested to see whether or not they start an early pit stop and try and bring him in early, and get him to do an undercut, because the pace was there. I think he was almost, well, it
certainly looked like it.
He was pulling in the front guys, and now all of a sudden, like you say, in the space of a couple of laps, he's dropped way down, all the way down
P9,
to
P9, isn't he, or P8?
Yeah, right the way down. P8 now, Rocky, or P9.
So this is Rast, then a race leader who he very cleverly has added another couple of tenths. So now Gary Pavitt is out of the DRS window in terms of being able to use DRS to try and attack René Rast. So there is Rocky then, who is ahead of Pascal Wehrlein. So it is P9 for Mike Rockenfeller now, who doesn't come in to take his mandatory stop, which would suggest there's nothing wrong with the car at all, just lost his mojo, as you say, and that there was that one lap where he lost a number of places, and he didn't sort of recover from that, really. Here's a replay of the start then. I want to see Lucas Auer's start, because he was just on a mission here. Vaulted Philipp Eng before they even got to the pit exit. And look at this, all the way down the outside, and this is where you've got to be so brave, and he just kept his foot in, didn't he? And that became P2.
He almost got all the way into P1 there, didn't he?
Well did.
Yeah, he was for a split second, but what a start. Fantastic launch.
Yeah, just got it absolutely right. And there we can see it from being on board with Gary Pavitt. Oh, the back end of the car just snapping away. And Timo Glock then has come in for his mandatory stop, having already been in for a drive-through penalty, of course, for the contact that he made with Lucas Auer, which has put Lucas Auer back to P16, regrettably. So the car's on the way out of the chicane then. Here is our race leader, René Rast, P1, Gary Pavitt, P2, and Bruno Spangler is P3. So in the top 3 places at the moment, it's the same drivers that we saw on the podium yesterday, but not necessarily in the right order, with the exception of René Rast, of course. Timo Glock is on cold tyres, which is why Rast has been able to get by him so easily, and Gary Paffett has got to try and find his way past the all-yellow BMW now, which he does so with ease, because Glock is warming those tyres that have not been pre-warmed as he's come out from his mandatory pit stop. So René Rast leads then by 1.5 seconds over Gary Paffett. This is Loic Duval, who's coming from P15 for his mandatory stop, and he's on his way out of the pit lane now. So 3 drivers have stopped. They are Loic Duval, Jamie Green and Timo Glock. So here is Loic Duval then out ahead of Jamie Green, but of course Jamie Green will be on tyres which are up to temperature, and Loic Duval therefore will be vulnerable to an overtake from Jamie Green. Here are the race leaders, or race leader René Rast through the chicane. Gary Paffett P2. Timo Glock, of course, is a back marking car effectively, and I suspect he will not hinder Bruno Spangler too much, and Bruno will go through to maintain that P3 place. Of course, Paul di Resta will be hoping for a potential opportunity here to get a bit closer to Bruno Spangler. So on board with Paul di Resta we were for just a few moments. He is P4. Here comes Spangler on Timo Glock then. And Timo's now going to very carefully try and close the door, I suspect. No, he doesn't, as Paul di Resta comes from a long way back and gets past Timo Glock as well. So Paul di Resta chasing down Bruno Spangler here. P3 for Bruno Spangler, P4 for the Mercedes driver Paul di Resta, who's P2 in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. But of course his enemy in the Drivers' Championship, Gary Paffett, is a place ahead. He's running in P2, so Paffett will clearly bank more points than Paul di Resta, should it all stay the way it is. But we've still got 36 minutes plus a lap of racing to come. An awful lot can happen, because we still have some 15 drivers, Ricky, that have come in for their mandatory pit stops yet as well.
And like I say, we'll hopefully see some 7.2 pit stops being done today. Some nice quick pit stops, and yeah, I think the pit crews are going to have a big job on their hands, because it's looking really tight out there and really close. And you know, like we're talking about, where they come out on cold tyres, they've got to be careful not to push too hard. But then at the same time, if you're coming out and your race rivals right up behind you, you've got to turn it up, and you've got to go, mate. So you can't hang around too much. But I love these onboard shots. It'd be great if we can maybe get an onboard shot when they come in and are out there on their cold tyres.
Yeah, I suspect they're having to really work very hard. So Rast, Paffett, Spangler, di Resta, Wittmann and Eng then is P6. We're following the number 3 Mercedes-Benz of Paul di Resta. Paul di Resta finished the race P18 yesterday, and here comes Pascal Wehrlein. Pascal Wehrlein was P14, is coming for his mandatory pit stop now in the number 94 Mercedes-Benz. So Wehrlein making his way down the pit lane. The car looks almost pedestrian with the pit lane speed limiter in, doesn't it, you know?
And it feels like that as well. When you're going down there, you're going so slow, but you watch the pit stop. Oh, 6.8, it's a quick stop.
Yep, that's not a bad one, is it? So Wehrlein on his way out of the pit lane now. And he's going to come out ahead of Loic Duval, isn't he, and Jamie Green. But both Loic Duval and Jamie Green are going to be on tyres which are considerably warmer than... Oh, as Jamie Green dives to the inside of Loic Duval. So is he going to be able to go through? No, he's not, because Loic Duval holds on to that place. So Rast, Paffett, Spangler at the head of the field, and that's where we go right now, with René Rast leading the race, 1.5 seconds ahead of Gary Paffett. Paul di Resta doesn't really seem to be able to reel in Bruno Spangler at the moment. As they cross the timing line now, it was 1.5 from P1 to P2. It remains exactly the same. It's almost identical back to Bruno Spangler as well from Gary Paffett. So they're all spaced out a bit equally, frustratingly for us. So Paul di Resta keeps his eyes, of course, the target is that black BMW ahead of him, but here is Marco Wittmann, who in turn, his target sights are the all-white Mercedes of Paul di Resta. So Marco Wittmann currently running in P5. And we have some 6 drivers that have stopped. Here comes Mike Rockenfeller then. Also in is Nico Muller. 6.3 second stop for Mike Rockenfeller. 7.5 for Nico Muller. So the Audi Phoenix team doing a good job there with the pit stop for Mike Rockenfeller, Ricky.
Be interesting now to see whereabouts he comes out, because you've got the two guys in the background viciously warming up the tyres to try and get any kind of tyre temperature in. It's interesting, around this track it's taken more than one lap. It's taking, even in qualifying, we're seeing an out lap, a build lap, and then a push lap.
Right.
Whereas some tracks, you know, you can come out and almost just do an out lap and then go straight into the battle. But look how Nico's defending really, really hard, and he's trying to keep hold of his place, and too rightly so.
So Pascal, his tyres are sort of 1.5 laps warmer than Nico Müller. He just had to yield there, didn't he? Otherwise there would have been contact between the two of them. And you can see that Nico Müller is trying to make the car as wide as possible and prevent Pascal Wehrlein. His tyres are cold. They're warming up with every metre, of course, that he travels, but I think he'll be vulnerable now as Wehrlein all the way around the outside and out on the grass as he is relatively squeezed by Nico Müller. Not all of that will be intentional, of course, because Nico Müller is struggling for grip on those cold tyres. But now, surely, Nico Müller is going to be prey going in towards the chicane. It depends if he can really stick his elbows out now. He protects that inside line. And Pascal Wehrlein is right alongside him. He has to shortcut the chicane. Now, I think he'll end up having to give that place back. And he does so because he knows he's going to have to give that place back because he shortcutted the chicane.
But now he'll get the run into turn one, so this battle is not over at all. But that's a good bit of defending. It's hard, but it looks
Muller's
fair.
doing a good job, isn't he?
But look at the Audis in the background. They're all going to be in a bit of a sandwich. Poor old Pascal.
So here comes Wehrlein then. Nico goes to the centre of the track, then hugs the apex of turn number one, squeezes Pascal once again, but Pascal now has got the inside line. There's a little love tap between the two of them, and Pascal says, take that, because you've given some of that to me. And Loic Duval is trying to take advantage of this as well and get alongside Nico Müller. He just lets off to allow no contact between Nico Müller and himself, but Pascal Wehrlein has come through. Here comes the race leader. So, René Rast then from the lead of the race. The Audi Sport Team Rosberg team standing by. Philipp Eng has come in as well from his P6 position. So the cars making their way down the pit lane now. Paffett now leads the race from Bruno Spangler and Paul Di Resta. So they go to work on the Audi of René Rast. We run the clock on both of them. 6.6 seconds. Well done to Audi Sport Team Rosberg doing their job well now with René Rast, and he is released back out into the traffic. So René Rast then, make sure he doesn't cross the white line on pit exit. You get penalised for that. He doesn't do so, and René Rast is through turn one. And now the team have been pretty clever with the strategy there because he's out there now. He's got to warm those tyres. He's got a lap to do that, hasn't he? And he's got no one ahead of him, no one behind him, so he's not under pressure as such, Ricky, and he can go about aggressively trying to warm these tyres as quickly as possible, but without the undue pressure of anyone around him.
Absolutely, he can now warm the tyres in what would be like almost the perfect way. He hasn't got like what poor old Nico had, where he had some a Mercedes breathing down his back. He's got a good amount of time now to build a good solid amount of temperature into these tyres without sort of pushing it too hard. But at the same time, he hasn't got anybody breathing down his neck, so he doesn't want to be too cautious as Paul is now trying to get past Bruno.
He is, and Spangler did a good job through turn one. Was there a little touch between the back end of Spangler and the front end of Paul Di Resta then through turn number two? Maybe so. But for the moment, Bruno Spangler is able to make sure that BMW stays ahead of the Mercedes-Benz. Currently, we're on board with Paul Di Resta now. Just takes a bit of the curve, doesn't he? Gets the maximum slingshot he can off of that as he continues his quest to try and find his way past the Bruno Spangler car. So Paffett leading the race, but bear in mind that Paffett has not been in for his mandatory stop yet. This man is P2, Bruno Spangler, and there is Paul Di Resta in P3. But as I say, that's we've got 9 drivers that have yet to stop for their mandatory stop, and these two are 2 of them. So as they head down the back of the circuit now through that kink, which is turn number 8, and in towards the chicane now as around has gone Mike Rockenfeller. So we just caught the back end of that. Mike Rockenfeller, he's able to recover from that. Now, whether that was just an error on Mike's part or whether he was provoked into that, where was he? He was around Pascal Wehrlein, I think. And in now comes Gary Paffett, Ricky.
This is going to be a really important stop. He has to be absolutely perfect, and it'll be interesting to see now where he comes out in relation to Ras.
Yes. Of course, he's going to be on cold tyres when he does come out, so we track Gary Paffett down the pit lane. In the meantime, Paul di Resta has another go at Bruno Spangler. And of course, the more these two fight, the slower they become. And di Resta trying everything he can to get on terms with Bruno Spangler. So we run the clock on the Gary Paffett car. As Ricky has indicated, it's crucial, critical where he comes out relative to René Rast. This is not a quick time, a problem with the rear. 11.1 seconds. He's prevented from leaving the pit lane because of other cars in the pit lane. And there is René Rast.
And look who could be the big winner here. This could be Philippe Eng on hot tyres compared to these guys that are coming out now on the cold tyres. But he's already been jumped by the other two BMWs. That was costly.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So that really didn't play into the hands of Gary Paffett, did it? It was a problem with the right-hand rear, wasn't it? That whether that wheel just got stuck or... You know, and that's frustrating because, you know, the teams work really, really hard and they practice and practice and practice these pit stops, but just sometimes things go wrong, Ricky.
Absolutely. It looked like there might have been a gun failure because you could see the guys banging the gun.
Right. Well picked up on that.
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Or maybe it even went on incorrectly and they had to then take it off and put it back on again. But obviously 11.1, and I think he was also caught out by another car that was coming down the pit lane.
Yes.
So everything that he didn't want to happen did happen, but no further
action on that incident between Wehrlein and Muller. But now this will be a critical one as well. Paul di Resta coming in.
These guys effectively were in first, or he was second, and Bruno was in P1. So it'd be interesting to see now how this pit stop goes.
I wonder if this is a good strategy because they tried to get past Spangler, hadn't they? And I just wonder whether thought, right, let's pit you now. That's a better time, isn't it? 7 seconds. Compare that to Gary's 11.1, I think it was. And here comes Paul di Resta now. So he will be on cold tyres, but critically, he will be ahead of Paffett. So you can now see Paffett behind the Philippe Eng car. So what Paul has got to do now is just try and get those tyres as warm as possible, as quick as possible. As Pascal Wehrlein here is fighting with Augusto Farfus. You'll recall Augusto Farfus, who had a real lunge on Pascal Wehrlein earlier on, but got past him. It was a feisty fight between the two of them, and Loic Duval is now lining up the number 94 Mercedes. There's a change of direction there from Pascal as he tries to defend against the Audi of Loic Duval. So Augusto Farfus in car number 15, the BMW there. Who's yet to stop? Spangler, Mortara, Freins, and Junkadea. Well, just as we say that, in comes Bruno Spangler. Again, Ricky, this is going to be a critical one, isn't it?
Absolutely. Here they go as the guys from BMW get underwork. 17 minutes. 7.1. That's good enough.
That's not shabby, is it? So, Spangler makes his way out of the pit lane 17 minutes. Let's zoom in and see who's coming down the start-finish straight.
There's going to be a gaggle of cars coming out. This is going to take all of his experience to try and fend as many of them off as he can.
So, René Rast and Lucas Auer have gone through. Here comes Bruno Spangler. He's out ahead of Paul di Resta. Now, critically here, and this is where I think the strategy that Mercedes played will work, is because now di Resta will have the advantage of having a lap's worth of warmth into those tyres.
And look at the onboard shot. You can see how quickly he's catching, but Bruno goes to the inside. Now he's going to try the outside, but the outside line doesn't normally work because you can normally run wide, but no, he's obviously just got the grip and he's just gone all the way around the outside. But Bruno will have the fresher tyres come the end of the race.
That was very clever work by the strategists, though, wasn't it?
Very clever work.
You've tried to get past him. Let's bring him in, and it has worked. And there's Marco Wittmann alongside him now. Almost defenceless, aren't you? Almost defenceless when you've got those tyres. Joel Eriksson is the next in the quest to get past Bruno Spangler. So who have we got left to pit? Edo Mortara, Robin Freins, Danny Junkadea, and Lucas Auer. So the race order now, effectively, is René Rast, Paul di Resta, and Marco Wittmann, of course, now finds himself up to P3, Ricky.
It's interesting. Marco's just really silently just gone about his business, stayed out of trouble. We haven't really seen anything of Marco in this race. But yeah, somehow he's all the way up in P3. So it'd be interesting now to see as Gary lines up Philippe Eng coming down the start-finish line.
So, right, let's see if you were right here. Was it the gun? I was right. I think it was the wheel stuck. Oh.
It's the smallest of margins, but he's going to try and go right the way around the outside. Can he pull it off? And just about, yes. Enough racing room left between the pair of them.
Yeah, very good overtake from Gary, and real respect between the two of them, because racing room was left by Philippe Eng, wasn't there? So Gary Pavitt goes through and moves up a further place. He's got to really get on this fight back, hasn't he? What have we got? 22.5 minutes plus 1 lap of this race still to come. So there is Gary Pavitt then. So Edo Mortara is nominally the race leader, with Robin Freins P2 and Daniel Juncadella P3, but those three have got to stop yet, and they haven't done so. So the real order is Rast, ignore Lucas Sauer, then it's Paul de Resta, Marco Wittmann, Bruno Spengler. Ooh, 3 abreast here with Mike Rockenfeller, Augusto Farfus, and Philippe Eng. Oh, and that was when we saw, that was a replay from earlier on when Mike Rockenfeller went around. Still didn't really see whether there was contact there. Oh, I think there probably was, wasn't there, Ricky?
Unfortunately so, but I don't think there was much really that Farfus could have done. I don't think Rocky saw him in behind Philip, and as the race director said, there's going to be no further action taken on that, but it's a massive shame, obviously, for Rocky, as it pushed him down when he was at one stage.
Yes, he was in contention, you're right. So, who's in the target sights of Gary Pavitt now? Of course, it's Joel Eriksson, the BMW driver who's taken a win in DTM. There's Edo Mortara, who is leading the race from Robin Freins and Danny Juncadella. Those 3 drivers have got to stop, and incidentally, Lucas Auer has got to stop as well. So the Mercedes-Benz of Edo Mortara, who had a little purple patch in the season at the Nürburgring, taking a P1 and a P2, but it's all gone a bit awry since then, although Mazzano, he had a P3 and a P2 as well. But Edo Mortara, Robin Freins, of course, celebrated his first podium in the DTM at the Italian round, but we are back in Germany at the Nürburgring, and from here we head across to Austria for the Red Bull Ring. And then, of course, the season finale at Hockenheim. Here is our race leader, René Rast. And look at the gap he has on Paul de Resta, who is effectively P2. It's 7.8 seconds. That's a big, big margin, isn't it? And once everyone has been in and settled themselves down, and we get back to the real race order, then René Rast is looking pretty comfortable here, I would say.
I think he is. I think what he's learned from yesterday is obviously implied today. Just whether or not that Audi is using too much of its tyres.
Okay.
But it looks like he's out for a Sunday drive, doesn't he? He's not put a foot wrong. He's hit every single apex, and as a driver, when you're in that sort of zone and it all is coming in perfectly, it's amazing.
De Resta's tyres will be 3 laps younger. Is that a noticeable difference, Ricky, in your experience? You know, if you've got 3 laps worth of... oh, dear. Goes from bad to worse for Lucas Auer, doesn't it? It sounded like the car wasn't in gear, actually.
Yeah, it sounded like there was... It looks like all the Jax guys had their hands up. But, you know, the car wasn't going. A box of neutrals, as they say.
Yes. Yes. So, but back to what I was saying. You know, 3 laps of difference on tyre deg. That's noticeable, isn't it?
I think so. I had... yesterday, I had two sets of taxi rides. Did one yesterday and one today. And I had a new set on today compared to the set that I had yesterday, and it was just night and day difference.
Really?
Honestly, okay. A massive difference. But obviously that was between an old set and a fresher set. But it would be interesting to see, like I say, is he managing the gap or is he pushing a bit too hard? Who knows? But look at Gary's right on the back now of Joel Eriksson.
Going into turn 1 now, surely an overtake opportunity here for Gary Pavitt. Joel Eriksson protects the inside line. Pavitt has to go to the outside, which of course would give him the inside for the next turn if he's able. I mean, he's right alongside. In fact, he's passed him. Another brilliant overtake. That's the second one that we've seen Gary do like that. The first was on Philippe Eng. That one was on Joel Eriksson. Executes them absolutely perfectly, doesn't he?
he's making that outside line work, isn't
Yes.
he? And it's so easy to lock when you're in that sort of position, because you're trying to squeeze the guy on the inside. As we see, look how much the cars are bouncing around on the braking zone. He's really well controlled that, and yeah, Joel's left him just about enough room on the exit as well. So
Yes.
I think Joel was hoping to try and come back then into turn 2. But unfortunately, Gary had it all under control. As you look at the onboard shot where you can see them really, really working now.
Working really hard. Gary Pavitt then, who now makes his way behind the paddock here at the Nürburgring through this turn 8, which is taken absolutely flat. You begin to climb just a little bit uphill as you head towards the chicane here. Then the left-hander as you dive in. Take the curve in, take the curve out, and that's where René Rast is relative to where Gary Pavitt is on the track. Pavitt's on the chicane, and René Rast is crossing the timing line. That's what sort of a margin he's got. So super slow-mo of René Rast then, who is leading this race. And doing a pretty good job. See, as we were discussing yesterday about René Rast, he is the type of driver that would have, instead of going to the big party, the after-race party that was here at the Nürburgring last night, he'd have been looking at data, wouldn't he?
Yeah, definitely, and you know...
That's not to say other drivers wouldn't, I'm not saying that, but, you know, he's certainly very, very focused on what he needs to do, isn't he?
Were you at the party last night, Dave?
No. I was working.
You're working on the stage?
Always. No, I wasn't. Those days are over, but yeah, once upon a time.
Once upon a time, but no, I think René is obviously he's an exceptional talent out there, and you know the other Audi guys are struggling a little bit, but somehow he's just banging in these performances and consistently now, and that's why you know he's a DTM champion, and that's why I think he'll be in contention when we come towards the end of the season.
Yeah, you may well be right. When we're talking about this at Hockenheim, you're going to be able to say, "Told you, Dave." Right. Here
Well,
comes
René will be open so as well, I think.
René around the Coca-Cola turn. Then here is Paul di Resta and Marco Wittmann. Is he one to watch here? The gap between the two of them is just 0.5, isn't it?
It's slowly been coming. I've just been watching this on the timing screen. It's been coming down ever so slightly every single lap. Not big chunks, and none of them making any mistakes. It just looks like at the moment that Wittmann might have a better car underneath him, and it might just be working in his favour a little bit at the moment.
Well, under braking then for turn number 1, di Resta seems
Tiny bit wide, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, but Marco was not really in a position to, well, he has got closer to him, there's no question about that, but you just get the impression here, when you have to start driving, Ricky, with the rear view mirror, looking at who's behind you, obviously that, you know, that does compromise your lap, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden you're not looking forward, you're looking back, as in comes Jamie Green. So Paul di Resta then, very conscious of the fact that he's got Marco Wittmann right behind him, and Marco Wittmann really working hard inside that car. He's another one of these quiet, unassuming drivers that just goes about his business, and he's, well, I think you've described many drivers like it. He's like this silent assassin that's creeping up behind him, isn't he?
He is our little silent assassin for this race, and there's a live championship.
Look at that,
figure.
if it stays
so
this
close.
way, 2 points between the two of them. But look at Rast, 149 points he would be on.
So he would effectively come into P3 now.
Yes.
So being a very, very strong... Well, it will be... Commentator's curse, don't want to say anything too soon, but it would be a very strong weekend for him if he can maintain this this race win. But the BMW looks like he's just holding the inside line a slight bit better.
Okay.
But here we go. Will he be close enough now as the gap is 0.5 of a second going into turn 1? But Duval's feisty, isn't he, towards the end of the race?
Yes, he is. And actually, having watched Loic Duval for race after race after race, it's sort of in the final quarter of the race where Loic really seems to come alive, doesn't he? Right. Now, Wittmann, as we look at the camera on board the Paul di Resta car, there is no question about it here, in my opinion, that Paul is having to defend now really quite hard because Wittmann is threatening, isn't he? But it's just, Wittmann probably is missing maybe the extra tenth that he needs as Loic Duval just takes a look at the inside of Pascal Wehrlein, but he's not able to do anything about it. It does strike me that these Mercedes are having to defend a bit here, Ricky.
Yeah, he's really having to work towards the end of the race, but the important thing is you're looking at the DRS usage a minute ago, and you can see Duval's got absolutely nothing left now.
No.
So, and same with Wittmann. Wittmann's only got 2 left.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how they use their DRS. Well, Duval unfortunately hasn't got any left, but how Wittmann's going to use his DRS to get past, because he hasn't got many chances at it. And when he is going to use it, he's got to make sure.
He's got to make it count, hasn't he?
Definitely. And he's going to have an attack them from behind as well when he gets back.
Well, that's the problem, because at the moment Paul di Resta can't defend using DRS because he's not within a second of anyone ahead of him. But if Wittmann does go by him, all of a sudden Paul di Resta is going to have DRS available to him, isn't he? So it could be a real topsy-turvy time. I mean, they're 7 tenths between them. Certainly Wittmann is close enough to be able to use it, but as you say, when he uses it, he's got to make sure it's going to count. So Loic Duval this time, again with no DRS, he's got to try and do this overtake without any DRS, and at the moment it's Nico Müller that's going to put himself up on the inside of Loic Duval, but not quite.
That was close.
It was close.
Very, very close.
Of course, Nico's still got DRS available to him, so that should make Loic Duval almost a sitting duck for him, but hasn't happened so far. Nico Müller, of course, Nico Müller and Loic Duval both from the same manufacturer. They don't want to take each other out. There would be words about that in the boardroom afterwards, wouldn't there? But you can see Nico Müller is all over the back of Loic Duval, but Loic Duval is continuing to pressure Pascal Wehrlein. And here we catch up with this battle for P2 and P3 once again between Paul di Resta and Marco Wittmann, but switch back to this battle that is going on. And incidentally, this is the battle for P9, for P10 and P11, so there are points in this, and at the moment, Loic Duval is in the final points-paying position and denying Nico Müller, who it's almost like he's warming the tyres, weaving from side to side. He genuinely isn't. He's just trying to upset Loic Duval ahead of him, but Loic Duval is just not one to be off-put but by said driver behind him. René Rast then makes his way through turn number 1. He's got 8.1 seconds over Paul di Resta. And of course, René Rast in the number 33 car. This would be a phenomenal result from him if it stays this way. As Ricky has indicated, it takes him up in terms of the Drivers' Championship. It's also 2 wins out of 2 starts. The first time that would have happened, I think, in DTM this season, if my memory serves me correctly. I don't think the same driver has won both races at the same weekend. So on board with René Rast now for Audi Sport Team Rosberg then. And here is Gary Paffett. Having got past Joel Eriksson, he hasn't broken away from him so much, has he? And I just wonder whether Joel is beginning to come back at him a little bit now. There's 6 tenths between the two of them, that's all. And, well, actually, that graphic would indicate that is the case, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Joel's definitely keeping him honest and keeping him on his toes. And like we're seeing a little bit with the Mercedes, they are dropping back a little bit towards the end of the race. But they certainly have the pace at the start. So, you know, it's a little bit of a cat and mouse now, and it'd be interesting to see how wide Gary can make that car, because I think he'll be coming under attack very shortly from Joel.
Well, let's see. Ahead of Gary Paffett is, of course, Bruno Spangler, who is a bit out on his own, to be honest with you, in that P4 place at the moment. A couple of seconds ahead of him is Marco Wittmann, then almost a couple of seconds behind is Gary Paffett. So here comes Joel Eriksson now to the inside of Gary Paffett. And Gary has just got that turn, absolutely. I mean, that's where he overtook Eriksson earlier in the race. And he just knows exactly how to use that turn perfectly. Absolutely.
I think Joel, I don't think he expected Gary to leave him that much room, and all of a sudden the room was there, so Joel decided to come off the brakes a little bit and try and make the move work. But Gary is very sensible. He knows that if he has the outside for turn 1, he then has the inside for turn 2. So he left him room there, thinking that, okay, if he does want to stick his nose down the inside, hey mate, it's all right, I've still got the inside for turn 2, which is a much longer corner.
So Paffett P5 then, and Eriksson P6, and just a little adjustment on the brake bias then for René Rast. Presumably as the fuel load goes down, Ricky, and the car becomes a bit lighter, you would adjust the brake bias then as well? Yeah, it looks like he's just gone a little bit further forward, but you can just see these are the lock-up lights. It's great, great onboard shot there. You can just see the lock-up lights coming up as the wheel starts to lock up, and then as it starts to under-rotate, it just starts to come down, and obviously when he's in a straight line, it's all off. But you can see he is susceptible to a little bit of front lock in there, and he wants to make sure he doesn't lock the fronts up too much, because that's going to obviously take life out of the tyres. He is just pushing on a little bit there and missing the apex slightly as we have a look at the lovely blue skies that we've got here today and the heli cams that are giving us these great shots. The last lap, he did a 1:25.648. Paul di Resta did a 1:24.890, and Marco Wittmann a 1:25.009. Bruno Spangler a 1:24.867. So There are quicker drivers than the race leader at the moment, but he's got that margin. I mean, it was 8 seconds. It's down to 7.2 now, as Pascal Wehrlein and Nico Muller continue their little fight together here. Nico Muller has obviously found his way past Loic Duval eventually. But now he's got the Mercedes-Benz, and this is for P9 in the race. So Nico Muller in a points-paying position at the moment because he's got P10, having got past Loic Duval, and now he wants to get past Pascal Wehrlein. But what have we got? We've got 8 minutes and a lap remaining, just as I reinforce that gap coming down between Rast and Paul di Resta. I mean, it's a big gap, Ricky, isn't it? And there are not enough minutes or laps left in this race, I would have said. But Paul di Resta is quicker.
He is definitely quicker, and it's amazing how much of a lead Renier is able to build. But then I think he knows that his tyres are going to go off.
Yes.
But I think he just sort of thinks, okay, if I could just work really, really hard, as Nico Muller's having a little look on the inside there going into the chicane. If he can build a big enough lead, I think he thinks, okay, I'm going to be out of the trouble.
Yeah.
And in clear air, and then I can fight and try and hold them off for the last couple of laps. But it'd be interesting to see now as Nico Muller's only got one use of DRS left as he comes down the start-finish straight, and the DRS wing is now open.
So he's got to do it now, but Pascal Wehrlein defends that inside line, doesn't he? Nico Muller is forced, therefore, around the outside. Can he do a Gary Paffett here? There's a little touch between the two of them. Pascal Wehrlein, well, he doesn't really give him room, Ricky, does he? But it's fair enough, he can defend, can't he? He's allowed to do that.
It's in his rights definitely to defend. I don't think Nico will be particularly happy about that, but what will be interesting now is he will still be able to get the good slipstream without the DRS, and the Audi is obviously working extremely well in the corners. Looks like he has good traction as now we see Rocky's gone up and down this race, and
Lucas Auer has gone down and down and down, unfortunately, hasn't he? We see him come into the pit lane. I just wonder whether it will be a race retirement for Lucas Auer. Edo Mortara's under some stress now and some strife from Robin Freins, isn't he?
Absolutely, there's a bit of a gaggle now creeping up behind Pascal Wehrlein, but at the same time I think you can see even the Mercedes now, Mortara, he's struggling a little bit.
Yes.
So there is something maybe with these Mercs or Mercedes that are struggling a little bit towards the end of the race relative to the other cars. But they are strong at the same time at the start, like we saw Paffett at the start of the race. But they are, can we see a move into the Coca-Cola corner?
See, now that is the first time that really has happened in this race, where I've been saying, if you get a good exit out of the chicane, you can get into the inside and actually make the overtake around the final turn, and that's exactly what Robin Freins did. And got past Edo Mortara. Nico Muller has dropped back from Pascal Wehrlein now. I wonder whether perhaps Nico might come under threat a little bit from Loic Duval now that both of them are out of DRS, and sadly it is a race retirement for Lucas Auer then, who promised so much at the beginning of that race with that brilliant start, and then the contact with Timo Glock. Such a shame, that must be so frustrating. But René Rast's time, look at this, last 3 laps from 7.2 to 6.6 to 6.2, but we've only got 5 minutes of the race plus 1 lap left. As I said, Pascal Wehrlein does get a black and white flag for forcing another car off the track. That was that incident just a moment ago where I said it's his right to defend, but of course it's not his right to push another car off the track, is it?
No, absolutely. I think that was pretty hard. It'd be interesting to see if what the race directors think of that, because you got to give credit to Nico. He knew this was his last chance. He had to pull something out of the bag, and unfortunately it didn't quite work. But yeah, just looking at the amount of DRS usages we've got Rockefeller on 1, we've got Frings on 2. Montara's still got 9.
Right.
So I don't know if...
Gudea's got 12. Yeah. Switch is bust.
I know, yeah. Poor young Gudea. He's used less DRS than Rast. And he hasn't
well, it's down to 11 now.
There you go, he must have heard us talking.
Well, here comes Rocky on Robin Freins, Edo Mortara. On the inside of Edo Mortara. Mortara across the rumble strips there will have the inside for the next turn to perhaps deny Rockefeller coming back at him. But Edo Mortara does manage to go through on Mike Rockefeller and chase after Robin Freins. Who's next in the order there? It's Daniel Juncadella, isn't it? The Spanish driver. And here comes Danny Juncadella all over the back of Mike Rockefeller now. Rast's lead is down to 5.7. We've got 3.5 minutes of the race plus a lap to do. It's coming down dramatically now, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's going to be sort of a case of what we had yesterday, where we were praying for one more lap.
Yeah.
But I think Ras will be praying for the complete opposite again. And but what's interesting is...
Well, look, you can see it now on screen.
It's coming down visually, but what's interesting, we've got Mercedes here, which is getting stronger and stronger and stronger
yes,
as the race comes to a close. And then we've got Audis that are getting stronger, and then Rast isn't. So they've obviously... They're all under the same roof, effectively, Mercedes, BMW and Audi, but it's interesting to see the different drivers and the different driving styles and the different setups that they'll be applying.
Yes.
And I think that's what we've got here. We've obviously got Rene likes an aggressive sort of car for the first couple of laps, and then he thinks, okay, whatever I'm throwing at the end, I'll
settle down and
I'll get my elbows out and try and defend on the last couple of laps. But as you see, a change of position there between the two Audi boys.
Well, and the big loser there. Edo Mortara, of course. There is Edo Mortara. So Lloyd Duval, Robin Freins. Ahead of them is Nico Muller. And just ahead of Nico Muller is Pascal Wehrlein. So we're on board with René Rast now. 5.4 seconds is what the gap was down to. He's heading into the chicane now with another couple of minutes plus a lap to do. Ooh, runs just a little bit wide on the exit of the chicane. Here comes Paul di Resta through that now. He's seen off the challenge from Marco Wittmann. You know, how frustrating is this, Ricky, when you can see the car in front of you now? You've managed to claw back so much of that gap, and it's almost within pouncing distance, but not quite.
Absolutely. I think this time yesterday, I think he was under a lot more pressure. I think Rast knows he could see the gap, and all the time he'd be talking to his engineers, how much have I got, how big is the gap? And obviously he'd be able to see it on the track as well. But
he was 8/10 quicker, di Resta, than René Rast last time around. The gap is down to 4.6 seconds. We've got 1.5 minutes plus one lap. So we've got this lap plus two more, effectively, haven't we?
So we've got a 3-lap dash to the end, and I don't know. If I had to put my money on it, I think he's played it safe. As we see another change of position, is it going to work?
Mortara and Duval here. This is the argument that's going on over P12. So Edo Mortara and Lloyd Duval. Edo Mortara with plenty of DRS left, and Lloyd Duval with nothing other than sheer pace of the car and his gritty determination. And one of the disappointed drivers today, and I feel so sorry for him, Lucas Auer, is with Verena.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Luki. You had a phenomenal start. I mean, really brilliant. But then unfortunately you had to retire because of the incident with Timo Glock. So how disappointed are you?
Yeah, as you said, very good start, and I was second, and then got spun around. I saw a yellow car, but that was it. And then my car was very damaged, and I had brake problems, so I retired.
Very unfortunate. Thank you very much, Lucas. Back to you.
Well, while we were hearing from Lucas Auer, all sorts of problems for Danny Juncadella. I saw the front wheel lock up, and then sparks flying. So Danny Juncadella trying to put the car into a position of safety, I am guessing. We've got 7 seconds plus a lap. And René Rast, who's got 4 seconds worth of margin over Paul di Resta, making his way now. So we've got the remainder of this lap plus one more, and 4 seconds is like an eternity to make up in that small period of time, isn't it, Ricky? A lap and a half.
It is when it's so close, and we're looking at the sector times now, and there's only sort of a 2-3 tenths in each of the sectors. So I think René has
managed it well, hasn't he?
Has managed it extremely well. But what I can't get my head around the distance or the different sort of setups that these guys must be having, as Danny's just about brought it back to the pit lane.
Yeah, here comes our race leader then, who's going to head towards the timing line now, and will start his final lap of the race. There is Paul di Resta, who's had a really valiant effort at trying to reel in René Rast, but he's not been able to do enough. What di Resta needs now is a huge mistake from René Rast, but he's not a driver that tends to make mistakes. I wonder whether Marco Wittmann now, within a second of Paul di Resta, will sense an opportunity here perhaps to wrestle away that P2 place from Paul di Resta in this final lap. So you would think not, because the gap looks too big, but more curious things have happened in the course of racing. We're on board with Marco Wittmann now. He's chasing down that Mercedes-Benz. Marco Wittmann is currently P3. His former teammate Ricky Collard is alongside us in comms here as we've seen another race which just another lap or 2 laps, a bit like yesterday. The face of it could have been altogether different, couldn't it?
Absolutely, but you know, top job to the Audi Sport guys. They've just worked out the perfect strategy this weekend, and you know, one more lap or a couple more corners and René would have been vulnerable, but no, I think they've timed it to absolute perfection, and this will be a nice steady last couple of corners. And as a driver, when you're coming through these last couple of corners on what could be a victory, it feels amazing in one sense, because you can see the crowd cheering, but at the same time thinking, oh, don't make a mistake, don't lock up, don't push too hard. But yeah, as he banks the final turn now, David.
Yes, here he comes. René Rast then. What a weekend it has been for this driver. He takes 2 out of 2 at the Nürburgring. René Rast is race winner once again. Paul di Resta takes P2, Marco Wittmann P3, Bruno Spangler is P4. There's a real drag race for P5, which is sealed by Gary Paffett. P6 is Joel Eriksson. Arno Zenzen is a very happy man on the pit wall. Philip Eng takes P8. Augusto Farfus is P7. What happened to Nico Muller then? And here is René Rast, who we're on board with now. 2-time race winner here at the Nürburgring then. 2 wins out of this weekend. Fantastic achievement. Running across the grass, this pickup that we discussed yesterday, just to make sure that the car will meet the minimum weight when it goes into the Parc Fermé area. So the top 10 rounded out by Philip Eng P8, Pascal Wehrlein P9 and Robin Freins P10. I wondered what had happened to Nico Muller right at the end. Well, into the chicane here with Eduardo Mortara. A touch from Edo Mortara sends the back end of the Nico Muller car around. So Nico Muller gets turned around by Eduardo Mortara. That will be looked at, of course, by the race stewards. We can see it here from another angle. I mean, that's very, very narrow through there, isn't it, Ricky? It's
extremely tight, and you know, the cars only have a limited amount of actual steering lock they can use. And you know, when I was going through there today, it is lock to lock, and unfortunately, I don't think that that they had much more lock left. And yeah, unfortunately, it was a big burnout. But unfortunately, it wasn't after flag; it was just before.
No, you're right. So René Rast, wow, what a weekend he's had. Well, just quietly confident at the start of this race. Perhaps more so than he was yesterday, where he was very, very understated. But he has done it and taken 2 wins this weekend and brought himself right into the Drivers' Championship. As you can see, he's now P3 on 149 points. There's 2 points between the leader and P2, Gary Paffett and Paul di Resta, 206 playing 204. But René Rast on 149 points. Now, bear in mind, Ricky, we've got 4 more races to come, haven't we? 4 more qualifying sessions to come. So there is a significant number of points up for grabs still. So the checkered flag falls for René Rast, the current DTM champion, who wins the 2nd race here at the Nürburgring this weekend. I love that shot as the checkered flag unfurls above the number 33 car of René Rast, which will go and park itself up now in the Parc Fermé area. He's pretty happy about that, Ricky, isn't he?
I'm about to say, I think we're going to see a proper celebration as far as they go, because back-to-back victories and back-to-back poles, and what a weekend. He hasn't put a foot wrong.
He has. It's been a perfect weekend for him, hasn't it? Perfect weekend. So René Rast is out of the car then. I have to say, that race has just flown by. It feels like it was a 10-minute sprint. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I'm standing here thinking, you know, a lot has happened, but actually it seems to have happened in a very, very short period of time. It doesn't feel like a 55-minute plus a lap race to me.
No, absolutely, and there's just so much action in the DTM. We're loving it, and the DRS is providing us with such great overtakes. And around this Nürburgring circuit, the insides become the outsides, and the outside then becomes the inside, and the overtaking this whole weekend has been absolutely exceptional. And This guy, unfortunately, hasn't had to do any overtaking, really.
No.
So he's missed out on a bit of fun, but...
oh, there's Lucas. Look, discussion on the pit wall. You got to feel for him because, you know, he had, you know, the best start of anyone, really, didn't he?
He could have been a real threat, I think, come the closing phase of that race if he was still there, but you know, that's a massive shame for him, and look at that for a hairstyle.
Good on you, Rene. And of course from here we go to another track where overtaking is always very, very interesting, the Red Bull Ring. I just love that stretch from turn 1 up to turn 2, the Remus turn, you know, where you're driving uphill and you continue going uphill through that turn 2, don't you? That's going to be a good one.
But then at the same time, you then also have the run then from turn 2 all the way down the hill into turn 3. And sometimes I think we'll see guys overtaking from turn 1 to turn 2 and then getting re-overtaken then maybe on the exit of turn 2 on the way down to turn 3. So, yeah, there'll be plenty of action and overtaking there at the Red Bull Ring.
We've only got a couple of weeks to wait for that. Once again, Ricky, this is really good for the DTM. I'll explain why I say that in just a moment. Paul di Resta, well done, sir. It's P2.
Congratulations, that was really phenomenal. Yesterday you were 18th, today from P11 to P2, and also you're only 2 points behind Gary Paffett, so that was truly amazing. You've got to be very happy.
After yesterday, qualifying wasn't the best. I think too focused on the race. You could see the pace was obviously quite good. It just rues what happened yesterday, and you know, through no fault of my own, I lost a lot of points, probably a third or a fourth. But listen, it keeps me in the title fight. It looks like we've got a pretty good package again still, and yeah, you're always a bit wary of what's going to happen the next day. And after qualifying today, I think I can be truly happy getting second.
And especially since only 4 races left to go, so now, I mean, you're really thinking about the championship, and only 2 points behind Gary is a good feeling as well, right?
Yeah, it's close. Listen, I would like to be in front. You know, I've only lost points twice this year, and at the same point, it's going to be about consistency. But listen, I'll keep my head down. It's a busy couple of weeks coming up, and you know, you have to come back to Spielberg with these new rules, which look like they've spiced up the racing, and see what we can do.
All right, well, thank you so much. Back to you.
Thanks very much. So Paul di Resta feeling pretty positive about that. The point I was going to make about what's so good about the DTM here is, and as Paul di Resta has said, spiced up the racing because of the rules. René Rast crossing the checkered flag once again and celebrating. Again, we've got all 3 manufacturers in the mix here, P1, 2 and 3.
Absolutely, and you can see the point that we're making at the start of the race. Any of these 18 drivers and 3 manufacturers that are here, all of them can win. Oh, and sure. You know, it's almost like you can stand here and throw a dice and take a guess at who's gonna get the top space.
P3 goes to the 2-time DTM champion Marco Wittmann.
And Marco's got to be really happy, man. I mean, coming from all the way P9 to P3, and also it's your first podium since Nürburgring, so let us see a big smile.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, was a long time not on the podium. Was quite hard 3 race weekends after Nürburgring, I have to say, and now to be finally back on the podium is really nice, especially for the team, for their home race. I mean, clearly the target is always to win, but looking that we came from P9, I think we can be super happy.
Oh, absolutely. So enjoy your moment on the podium. Thank you, Marco Wittmann. Back to you.
Thanks. Great to talk to Marco Wittmann. And there we can see backstage then as Loic Duval is in conversation there with Mr. Jean Todt from the FIA, of course, who is here. And doubtless will be involved in the trophy presentations on the podium, I suspect. And the drivers we're going to see up there on the podium, of course, René Rast for taking the race win, Paul di Resta for P2, and Marco Wittmann for P3. Here's confirmation of the result then. René Rast, the winner. Paul di Resta P2, Marco Wittmann, Bruno Spangler P3 and 4. Then it was Gary Paffett, Joel Eriksson, Augusto Farfus, Philipp Eng, Pascal Wehrlein and Robin Freins rounding out the top 10. The rest of the order on the second page, as you can see, from Loic Duval, Mike Rockenfeller, Nico Muller, Edo Mortara, Jamie Green, Timo Glock, and sadly, Daniel Juncadea and Lucas out of the race. So that confirmation of the race 16 done and dusted as Mr. President shakes hands with Paul di Resta. And he, of course, one of the drivers that will be appearing on the podium, taking that P2. And as Verena found out, is merely just a couple of points within the championship fight with Gary Paffett now. René Rast, though, what a weekend he's had. You know, when you go away from a weekend like that, Ricky Collard, you know, it couldn't have been any better for him. You know, you must go away completely satisfied.
Absolutely, and you know, it's it's great to have that feeling, and I'm sure that he's going to be absolutely chuffed. And like we're talking about the type of guy that he is, he'll probably have a couple of days now to celebrate, but you know, straight away, bang, he'll be thinking about Spielberg.
Yeah, of course.
Because, you know, I think he will be in the mix. He's already up to P3 in the championship. Now, these other two guys, of Paul de Rister and Gary Paffett, they have obviously cleared themselves a little bit in the championship, but you know, it's only 50 points, and it only takes one of them to have another non-finish, like what Paul was talking about earlier, and then all of a sudden René will be right in the tussle.
Yeah, you're right. So a lot of racing still to come. So there is our race winner, René Rast, then 2 times this weekend. What a job he's done. And he's about to be brought out onto the podium. So there he is, the podium awaits. Making history here at the Nürburgring then. René Rast to the top step of the podium again.
What a great feeling, looking down at all your fans, and most importantly all the mechanics as well that have helped.
They've contributed, haven't they?
They have contributed, and you know, they faultless stop today, and it's interesting to see the small mistake that happened in Paul de Rister's stop as Marco Wittmann now comes up onto the podium, shakes the hands of both his fellow drivers, and takes third place on the podium.
So then the podium containing René Rast, Paul de Rister and Marco Wittmann. And, oh, good to see Arno Zenzen up there on the podium as well. And time for the national anthems to play out for the race winner, René Rast.
Gestern wie heute die deutsche Nationalhymne.
So someone there on the turntables having a bit of a mix-up with the national anthem. That was someone with a baseball cap the wrong way round. The right way round is René Rast with P1 on the side of it because he is the race winner. And then Mr. Jean Todt, the president, Mr. President of the FIA, making the trophy presentation to René Rast. And he holds the trophy aloft. That's an impressive, mighty impressive one, isn't it? So, well done, René Rast. He's taken the race win.
Do you reckon any of them will have the balls to spray champagne at Jean Todt?
No, I don't think so. And Arno Zenzen there receives the trophy also from the FIA president, Mr. Jean Todt. They've done a good job, that's for sure, over both the races this weekend and, of course, over the qualifying sessions as well. They've delivered the car that René Rast has been able to drive. Harold Groves, of course, former DTM star, makes the trophy presentation to Paul de Rister.
Very calm and collected, wasn't it?
I have to say, I'm being a bit cautious there because that, to me, looks like Klaus Ludwig. Sorry, but perhaps it is Harold Groves. No. And that is most certainly not Mrs. Ellen Law.
No.
So, in light of the fact that a mistake has been made there in the graphics, just to add some disaster to the everything in this commentary booth, the whole screen tipped over there.
Well controlled, Dave, well controlled.
So I'm pretty sure that was Klaus Ludwig and then Mr. Groves. I hope so anyway. Apologies if I've got that wrong, but there, all the drivers on the top step of the podium.
Time for the champagne.
Yes, almost. And I think Mr. Jean Todt, the FIA president, will have made haste his escape now. As everyone celebrates up there. And, well, actually, look, René Rast he's quite understated in his celebrations as well, isn't he?
He's saving the champers, isn't he? I think we're going to see a famous bottle drop in a minute, but fingers crossed there is actual no drop.
No.
And the mechanics catch it. But yeah, we'll stay tuned and have a little watch. I think there's some happy faces down there because they know they're getting some champagne.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. You know, the team have delivered for Rene, that's for sure. And no, he was saving it, look, for the team boss. One might need a new shirt, sir.
That stuff when it's in your eyes as well.
Oh, really?
Man.
You certainly have more experience of that than I do, irritatingly. There, eyes being wiped. And let's talk to the race winner, 2 out of 2 this weekend, Rene Rast.
He's very happy. He's very wet, that's for sure. Congratulations, you really did do it. And it's the first time in the history. Wir haben die Kamera. Never mind, don't worry about it. Hello, smile to the camera. That happens when you're live. But I just wanted to say it's the first time ever in the DTM that happened. 2 races in 1 weekend, so really phenomenal. And do you want me to pinch you, or are you realizing it yet?
I cannot really describe it. I mean, history making, you know, 2 wins, 2 pole positions, never, as you said, first time in DTM, so unbelievable. And the race again was very tough today. I thought I had it under control middle of the race, and then suddenly in the end I couldn't turn the car, and it was very hard to drive. And you know, in the end we have to be happy. I mean, maximum points on a weekend, 3rd in the championship. There's nothing really to complain.
And let's not forget, you're now 3rd in the championship standings, and there are 4 more races to go. So from here, anything is possible, René.
Yeah, anything is possible, but still a big gap to Gary and to Paul. But we are closing up, you know. I think in the last 4 or 5 weekends, we were the car scoring most of the points. So you never know what happened.
Well, congratulations. Enjoy the moment, and I'm sure you're looking forward to Spielberg just as much as we are. But anyway, before that, let's go back to the commentator.
Thank you very much. Whilst Verena was talking to Rene Rast, Ricky, we missed a very good bottle drop, didn't we?
We did miss a very good bottle drop. It was a successful one as well, which is great. And the smiles from all the guys, because I know there's a nice cold bottle of champagne's coming over their way.
We say a big thank you to Ricky Collard, the BMW Junior, for being alongside us in comms this weekend across 2 phenomenal DTM races, which have proved to be record-breaking. As for the first time in DTM's history, 2 pole positions and 2 race wins, as well as Rene Rast goes into the record books. We turn our attention, of course, to the Red Bull Ring, which is next. There was the famous bottle drop from all of us here in the comms. We look forward to seeing you in Austria for the next rounds. Here's Verena once again.
How exciting was that? An amazing race weekend here at the Nürburgring, and we are so much looking forward to Spielberg. In just 2 weeks, we're going to have the next round, and all in all, it's only 4 more races to go, so we cannot wait. Thank you for joining us, and here are the highlights of today's race. Enjoy, and see you in 2 weeks in Spielberg.